30% of 180 is 54.
Okay. So what we want to do is to make sure, as I'm looking at our service, I'm thinking our service is real specific here. You know, what may have been a more practical one for the purpose of this process is to say, provide financial assistance and case management services to access housing. Because realistically, I mean, right now what we're saying is, you know, so we can, I might just add that in if we're cool with that, just for the purpose of, exactly. And we don't want to.
The marker could be that we help them get financial assistance.
And we don't want to do that. That's not a realistic, I mean, that's more of an outcome than it is, So we need to, and that's something that really in this process is going to happen anyhow. You're going to be adjusting things. So what we've identified right now then is that we're thinking.
I feel like those are two different outcomes.
Okay, so 180, and we're thinking 54.
54 actually
will
get
actually have
financial help.
access because we're going to be providing case management services to 180 of them, but only 54 of them are going to be entering into a household. Will get into housing. Will.
Do we have to say we'll stay in housing or we'll just get in
housing? Gain affordable housing.
Just gain, okay.
Should we do a maintain for 90 days?
Yeah, that's what I mean. We have to know.
Well, we'll talk about that later.
Sorry.
Well, that's what the one in front said. These over here said to do that.
And so when you're in the planning process, I think one of the things is you'll go back to your thing and define it as you go along.
And that's exactly it.
As you can narrow
We
it
have to
down.
be able to analyze our data, and so that's really how we get to that point. And we actually have some modules that are gonna dive directly into that. How we take that basic and we are able to analyze the results that we accomplish and adjust our plan to make sure that it reflects appropriate things.
6 months?
Okay, cool.
54 of 180 or we'll gain affordable housing within 6 months.
Why did you put an X over the or? What did we miss it for?
Because that's percent.
Because we're gonna jump back into that
got
at a
it.
different
Okay.
point, but we already know the answer, so that's helpful. Yeah, so, we just X marks the
We did it
spot that we
backwards, I
will
got it.
return to, so. That's something that doesn't get added until a later module. Okay, so with this, as you see here on page number 58, we've been able to identify an outcome indicator. We've put some numbers onto the idea of our service. In this process, we identified that we needed to adjust our service a little bit, and that's okay because this is the perfect part for us to be doing that, is to be dialing in those details and ironing out any glitches that we might have. So with that, we have another column on here. Look at that. So 1, 2, 3, 4 are now represented. Okay?
No suey.
Yeah, sweet. So, again, we're gonna add percentages at a different point. That's gonna be in our next one. So, and I will move that over once I'm able to tactfully do that without trying to rip everything apart at this point. So let's move on to page number 59. Page number 59 talks about those national performance indicators. Again, this is something that came from that 2001 mandate that we're gonna report out on things. We are part of a really cool national network because we receive these community service block grants. And so again, our entire goal is to make sure that we're reporting really the strength and the power of what community actions collectively can do. And we're only able to report out on that level of outcome when we have universal language and universal categories that we're reporting on. So that's what this focuses on page number 59, is the idea that we have to balance our localized work with outcomes to create a more uniform and accurate way to report out on that national level, not only to the people that provide us with our funding, but also to the public. You know, we are responsible for looking at what our collective impact is, and in order to do that, we need that uniform language, okay?
So the National Community Action Partnership, like if you just go to communityactionpartnership.org or .com, I can't remember what it is that actually the national organization you're speaking of?
Yeah, yep,
Okay.
yep, so that's our network,
I
yep,
just wondered, because I
exactly.
found, when I was searching for relational databases, I
Yeah.
found their site,
Yeah,
and it came up with
exactly.
there's a
Yeah.
database that's actually on their site for national information.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
so that's, and they're moving more and more towards having that be an online resource that people would be able to access to
Right, I
get
just registered for an account. So
information, so, yeah. So in 2004, I mean, as you see here within this box, it gives us some background information specifically in terms of the development of these national indicators. And really our important thing here is, again, having that common language across the 1,000 different agencies with the 50 states that are represented, as well as Puerto Rico. I mean, we also have some other entities that we need to collect data from. And the national performance indicators are about community action and not just about the block grant. So even though the block grant mandates that we're reporting out on this, we want to make sure that we're also recognizing that this is about community action partnership and it's not specifically just about CSBG entities. And that's why we have an opportunity to put in additional information in our annual report that gives us, an opportunity to tell our whole story. So the NPIs are helpful. Again, we have that, we have the community level and we have the agency, or not the agency now with these new performance indicators, but the family level. And all of these ask for both the numbers served and the numbers achieving an outcome. And that's new. We didn't have to do that before. So again, we're putting that increased responsibility on each agency to make sure that we're calculating all of these things and targeting our efforts in a way that's meaningful and appropriate. So it's just that, greater emphasis on being able to use indicators for both management and accountability. We're creating plans that work and we're reporting on how our progress is with that. So some of the key areas within this, again, just balancing out the localized work with what that national push would be, okay? Let's move on to page number 60. We are so close. Look at that, module 5 is just like peeking out right there. So we are cruising along. This is beyond the national indicators, okay? So the power of the NPI, again, is these are just some standard ways for us to assess and evaluate how we're doing what we're doing. It doesn't give that whole picture. It's up to us to tell the whole picture and the story of what we're doing to make sure that that all gets recognized and factored in. So it was acknowledged that by focusing on the most commonly identified outcomes, the other outcomes wouldn't be reported, and that was a concern people had early on, was like, but we don't get this, we don't get to brag about our accomplishment here or in this arena, but we can, there's other categories. So we're able to include all of that in with the annual report so that we get that whole picture. Again, it's just kind of a sampling of what it is that we do. And periodically, these do get changed, these national performance indicators. We have all sorts of task force out in the field who can, supplement or provide some suggestions for changes when it comes to that. So let's go through the key points. Again, if you want to follow along with those learning objectives, you are more than welcome to, but I'm just going to read off the key points in speed. So a plan must be well written, clear, and realistic if it's to be implemented effectively and efficiently. The plan should be appraised periodically and changed as circumstances arise. Sometimes we need to alter them to make them better. Sometimes we need to make sure our services are appropriate to meet the outcomes we're hoping to accomplish. So implementation of the plan needs good communication systems to support it. We have to make sure that everybody in the organization is well informed, well equipped, and well assigned in terms of accomplishing what we're aiming to do. The concept of an outcome indicator was introduced, and this is just our way to quantify the results that we have. And we've also made a connection between Roma outcome indicators and the national performance indicators. And so there is that connection and that merging of those things. And the power of the NPIs is it's only a set of indicators, but we are also invited to introduce more things if we would like to. Okay?
Play ball?
What's that?
The baseball time?
Yeah, I know, I'm so excited for baseball. So
I saw
I know that I
baseball.
said earlier that I have a favorite page in the manual, but we are getting really close to my other favorite part of the manual, so watch out. I just want to check and see here. We are running a little bit behind right now, so let's work on evaluating performance, okay? So we're gonna jump right into this one on module number 5. Module number 5 starts off on page 61. What's up?
I'm not talking, it's them right there.
Can I? Okay. So the learning objectives. Participants will understand how to use data from the Carter questions, identify performance and accountability. Is everybody on page 61? Okay. Participants will learn to identify how to calculate success for the CSBG network in 2 ways. Participants will learn what baseball teaches us about measuring performance. Participants will identify industry standards for performance, and participants will identify measurement tools and process. Participants we're going to practice matching outcomes and indicators to measurement tools and a process involved. Okay? So on page number 61, we're just going to jump right into this. All of this is really well spelled out within your manual, so please feel free to refer back to it as we, if you get back to the agency and you have some additional questions. So on page number 61, we see here that we have those Carter questions are introduced again of 1, 3, and 6. How many clients, what services, and what happens as a result of these services. So the next addition to our logic model is going to be a way to calculate our performance and to really measure that performance. So we saw that with the creation of the indicator, there's a relationship between the number of the clients who are served and the number of clients who achieve the outcome. So such as like 10 out of 50 of the clients got a job. And so this is a basis for calculation, and we're going to work on identifying that, and that's really spelled out on page number 63 here. Okay? What we want to be considering as well is that rate of change, because sometimes we have short-term, long-term type change, and that really does impact how we're doing things. So on page number 63, we'll see that performance is a percentage, also known as a rate, okay, that we're going to be used to measure performance. And so that represents a relationship between those receiving the services and those achieving an outcome. And it really helps us give us some dimension as to what type of successes that we've had. So with this, I would just want to go through here. There are 5 steps used to identify expected performance and a final 6th step to determine actual performance. So the first one is we have to identify the outcome, okay, what happens or what changed. We have to identify the service, that activity or intervention, and Carter talked to us about that in number 3. Identify the number of people receiving the service. We have to identify the outcome indicator in some sort of quantitative statement. We have to be able to estimate our performance, so we have to calculate that relationship between the number receiving and the number achieving. And these steps occur prior to the delivery of the service. So they are used before we actually deliver the service. So after they've been delivered, then we have some actual performance that we're able to calculate there. So what we want to look at here is, and that last step is the actual performance when we calculate it there, okay? If we move ahead to page number 64, we're going to talk some here about what all of this means, okay? So we see that there's an example. Can somebody read starting at estimating performances?
A family self-sufficiency program has enrolled 20 families who will receive case management services over the next 6 months. It is estimated or projected that 7 of these families will increase their household income as a result of various activities coordinated by the case manager.
Okay, so as you see, it goes on to list again all of those different elements that we would want to be evaluating. But our big thing at this point is that we see that there are 20 families in the denominator here. Let me get that right. So we have 20 families. 20 families that are enrolled. 7 of them, this is their estimated performance, are expected to do it. So that would be a success rate of 35%, okay? So that's what we start off with, is looking at that. So this is all, oh, that's why. So when we look at actual performance, it's gonna require some follow-up. So we have to follow up and see how things have actually performed. So we know that 20 people were still enrolled, okay, so we still have that down here. But what we see with our follow-up after we've performed is that only 5 of them were able to achieve that level of performance and that outcome. So we see that while we predicted 35%, only 25% were able to accomplish that outcome. Okay, so that's our actual success rate there. Cool? Cool. So we will come back to the other categories at a different point, but what we do want right now is for us to finally be able to write our percentage right here. Do we remember what that was?
30%?
30%, that's right. Okay, so 30% is on there, okay? So now what we're able to do is go back over here, and that's our R, okay? So R is there. We've assessed, we've planned, we've implemented, and now we are achieving, observing, and reporting on our progress with our results. We are cruising through the Roma cycle, and we're gonna finish it up quickly. So we have that on there, it's the R, and what we'll do at this point is talk about measuring actual performance with a reduced denominator, okay? So that's gonna be on page 65 here, okay? So what about dropout rate?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, okay, we decided we're gonna
Is
have
it that high?
20 people that are gonna be there, 20 enrolled, but some people drop off. So we have to figure out a way to report on our progress and our accomplishments, factoring that in. So that means that at times we have a reduced denominator. So as we review the fraction on the page here of page 65, we see 5 out of 15.
Right.
Were the actual performance with the reduced denominator of 15 who had completed it. We had 20 that were enrolled, 15 went through, so we actually had 33% that completed it, okay? And so that is our actual that's there. So it's important for us to do that and to tell this statistical story because it tells us different information. You know, it may be that we want to, as a program, figure out how to mitigate the
How to keep
dropout
the
rate
20,
and to
right.
keep it at 20. It tells different information. So we statistically, we need to be able to report out on that. Yes, sir.
So if you had 5 that dropped out, your actual performance goes lower, not higher. How did we get a higher success rate if 5 dropped out?
5 dropped out, but we had a reduced denominator, so because we put that down then as the number that have actually completed, not the number who had enrolled,
Oh, it's
then
the
we
number
have that
completed
15.
is
Yeah,
correct.
so,
But
yeah,
as a no-
exactly,
okay,
and
okay,
that's where we
I
want,
follow.
these again are, these are actual performance
Okay.
measures, but they
But
tell
they're
different
two
stories.
different, right.
2 different metrics,
And that's
exactly. Okay,
exactly
that makes
it.
sense,
So
absolutely.
next
Sorry.
year, you might say, we want to up the number of people who stay in the program.
Right.
Yeah.
reduce
We
the
want
Exactly.
dropout.
to
Reduce the
emphasize
dropout,
that.
obviously,
Yep,
there's
we're gonna reduce
Right.
that, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
So when we do our follow-up calculations, because we do estimate our performance before we provide a service, and we remember that because earlier in the module, we talked about the steps we take before we provide that actual performance. Then when we do our follow-up calculations, we always use actuals. Okay, so we always use actual numbers. It's no longer a guesstimate. Now we're reporting out on what we were actually able to achieve as a result of that. So we've established that. Okay, so again, we talked about the value of counting all of the 20 people because we need to see what leads to dropout rates. And we've also, we used resources on those 20 people, you know? We had
Right.
registration forms, we set out notebooks, we did those things. So we have to have that be part of our story that we're telling because we've expended some resources on it. Another reason is because we want to make sure that, another reason to use both of the numbers is so that you know how successful your customers were when they did complete the program.
Right.
It's just important information to
both.
share. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And we want to be able to share that with the people that we serve, maybe knowing that 33% of those who completed, you know, got it, will get some of those kids that dropped out from that program. So it's just some ideas there of what might be effective or helpful with it.
We also know 25% was our dropout rate.
Yep.
Right, exactly, exactly. So, we are going to look at page 66, and I think we actually are